At 6:30 on the morning Lady Verena Holt was to take the Duchess of Greymere's place, Cecilia Wren was packing her own wedding gown into a cedar chest. She folded the ivory silk carefully, not because she intended to wear it again, because it was the last thing in the room that still remembered the woman she had been when she married Dorian. 7 years earlier, the Duke of Greymere had lifted that veil with trembling hands and whispered that he had never feared anything as much as loving her. Cecilia had laughed. Dorian Wren feared no one, not Parliament, not creditors, not even his severe father, whose disappointment had ruled Greymere more powerfully than law. But on their wedding morning, Dorian had looked at Cecilia as though she possessed the only power capable of breaking him. She had believed that meant he would never choose another woman over her. Now Lady Verena's dresses were waiting in the corridor. "Must you do this yourself?" Cecilia's companion, Mrs. Aubrey, asked. Cecilia placed the wedding gown beneath a layer of tissue. The servants should not be forced to decide which duchess they serve. There is only one duchess. Not after noon. The Duke could not legally marry Verena while Cecilia lived, but law mattered less than appearance inside a great house. At noon, Dorian would present Lady Verena to the Greymere Estate Council as his official companion and future partner in all household affairs. Verena would sit in Cecilia's chair, wear Cecilia's family pearls, possess the keys to the household rooms. Cecilia would be sent to a small property near the coast, with an allowance large enough to make abandonment appear generous. Mrs. Aubrey closed the bedroom door. "You could stop him." Cecilia looked at the sealed letter resting on her dressing table. She had written Dorian's name across it just before dawn. "No, you have proof." "I have news. News that would change everything. That is why I cannot use it." Mrs. Aubrey stared at her. "My lady, you are carrying his child." Cecilia's hand moved instinctively toward her stomach. No one would have known by looking at her. The physician believed the child had existed for little more than 8 weeks. After years of disappointment, whispered blame, and 2 losses that hollowed the marriage from within, Cecilia had stopped believing motherhood would come to her. Then Dr. Bell arrived the previous afternoon with the impossible truth. She was with child, and he had brought something else, a confession. 3 years earlier, Lady Verena had paid him to tell the Duke that Cecilia could never carry an heir. The diagnosis had been false. Dorian had never seen the original medical report, only the copy Verena placed in his hands. Mrs. Aubrey looked toward the letter. "Tell him before the council meets." "And what will I learn?" "That he will send Lady Verena away. Because he loves me? Because she deceived him." Cecilia closed the cedar chest. That is not the same thing. She had waited years for Dorian to choose her. Not her family fortune, not the heir he hoped she would provide. Her. Yesterday morning, she had almost told him about the child. Then she overheard him instructing the steward to prepare the Duchess's household keys for Verena. Dorian had made his decision while believing Cecilia had nothing more to give him. If she revealed the pregnancy now, she would never know whether he wanted his wife or merely the life growing inside her. Mrs. Aubrey's eyes filled. "Then what will you do? Leave? And the letter?" Cecilia lifted it from the table. "Mr. Merritt will give it to Dorian after he places Verena in my chair. You are waiting until the humiliation is complete." "No." Cecilia tied the letter with a pale blue ribbon. "I am waiting until his choice is honest." Dorian Wren stood in the estate council chamber, examining 2 chairs. One belonged at his right hand. The other had been placed near the far wall. "Move the Duchess's chair closer," he told a footman. Lady Verena entered behind him. "No." Dorian turned. She wore a dark red morning dress and Cecilia's pearl necklace. The sight disturbed him. He had authorized the jewels, yet seeing them against another woman's throat felt strangely wrong. "Cecilia remains my wife," he said. "And she has spent the last year refusing every effort you made to repair the marriage." Dorian looked away. That was not entirely true. He had not made efforts. He had made proposals. Move to a separate wing. Stop questioning Verina's accounts. Avoid discussing the children they lost. Allow him to manage his grief without forcing him to name it. Cecilia had refused all of those things. Dorian called her difficult. The truth was less flattering. His wife had stopped allowing him to hide. Verina moved beside the empty chair. If Cecilia sits near you, the council will believe nothing has changed. Something has changed. Then let them see it. Dorian touched the signet ring on his hand. Do you enjoy this? Verina's expression softened. Enjoy what? Replacing her. I am saving Greymere. Her father's bank had offered enough money to prevent the Western estates from being sold. In return, Verina would receive influence over Greymere's financial affairs. Dorian had convinced himself it was practical. He had also convinced himself that Cecilia no longer loved him. Believing both made the day easier. Verina touched his sleeve. You deserve a woman who supports you. Cecilia supported me for years. And what did that give you? The question carried its answer. No air, no peace, no unquestioning admiration. Dorian moved away from her hand. At the council chamber doors, the elderly butler, Mr. Merritt, appeared. Her Grace requests a private word. Verina's mouth tightened. The council arrives in 30 minutes. Dorian nodded. I will see my wife. Cecilia waited in the winter garden. She wore pale blue. Dorian remembered the dress. She had worn it during their first spring at Greymere, when they spent an entire afternoon planting white roses in soil neither of them understood. Most of the roses died. They laughed for weeks. Now Cecilia stood among the surviving bushes with the composure of a woman preparing to bury something. Dorian stopped near the door. You wish to speak with me? Yes. Her gaze moved over his face. She seemed to be memorizing him. The thought made him uneasy. Your carriage is prepared, he said. I know. The coastal house has been repaired. How thoughtful. You always liked the sea. I liked it when you were beside me. The words struck him. Dorian stepped closer. Cecilia. She looked away. For one dangerous moment, the distance of the past year disappeared. He remembered the way she used to fall asleep with her head against his shoulder in the library. The way she argued with him, then kissed him before either could decide who had won. The way she held his hand after their second loss while he stared at the bedroom wall, too frightened to hold her back. I never intended for us to become this, he said. No one intends ruin. They simply make small choices until it becomes the only room left. You stopped speaking to me. I stopped begging you to listen. His jaw tightened. Verina understands the pressure I face, because she helped create it. Dorian's expression changed. This again. Her father's loans are designed to give him control. You have no proof. I brought you proof. You brought suspicions. I brought accounts. Accounts prepared by your solicitor, because your steward refused to release the originals. Dorian felt the old frustration rise. Every conversation with Cecilia became a mirror. He had begun resenting her because she reflected things he did not wish to see. Today is already difficult, he said. For whom? For everyone. No. Cecilia faced him. Today is difficult for me. For you, it is convenient. Dorian's pride sharpened. You believe I wanted a childless marriage, failing estates, and a wife who looks at me as though I am already condemned. The instant he said it, he wished he could take it back. Cecilia's face emptied. The roses, the glass walls, and the pale morning light seemed to disappear. Childless, she repeated. Cecilia. No. Let the word remain where you placed it. He moved toward her. She stepped back. I did not mean... You did. Her hand briefly touched her stomach. The movement was small. Dorian noticed, but did not understand. Cecilia's voice softened. I came here to give you one final opportunity. To do what? To ask me to stay without offering a condition. Dorian stared at her. The council. The debts. Verena. Everything waited beyond the garden doors. You know I cannot change the arrangement now. Cecilia nodded slowly. Yes. The absence of argument frightened him. She removed the household keys from her waist and placed them on the stone table. Dorian looked at them. Cecilia, I hope Lady Verena finds them lighter than I did. She walked past him. He caught her hand. The touch stopped them both. Her fingers were cold. His thumb rested against the wedding ring she still wore. Was there ever a time you believed we could recover? He asked. Cecilia looked into his eyes. This morning. Dorian released her. She left the winter garden without looking back. At noon, the Greymere Estate Council assembled. Lady Verena sat at Dorian's right hand. Cecilia's chair remained against the far wall. The Duchess did not attend. Dorian told himself that was easier. Then Mr. Merritt announced that her carriage had passed through the western gates. Something inside Dorian shifted. He had expected her to remain until evening. Expected one final confrontation. Expected tears he could privately interpret as proof that she still wanted him. Instead, she left quietly. Verena placed one hand over his. The council is waiting. Dorian stood. Before him sat bankers, tenants' representatives, magistrates, and members of the Greymere family. He had rehearsed the statement. Yet the words felt wrong in his mouth. From this day forward, Lady Verena Holt will assume the duties previously held by the Duchess of Greymere. A murmur passed through the chamber. She will have access to household accounts, estate correspondence, and council meetings. Verena smiled. Dorian continued. She represents the future stability of Greymere. At the word future, Mr. Merritt entered. He carried a sealed letter, tied with pale blue ribbon. Your Grace. Dorian recognized Cecilia's handwriting. When was this delivered? Her Grace gave it to me this morning. Why did you wait? She instructed me to present it only after Lady Verena had been named Greymere's future. The room seemed to close around him. Dorian broke the seal. The letter contained 2 pages. The first was written by Cecilia. Dorian, yesterday I learned that I am carrying your child. His fingers tightened. The words blurred. Across the table, Verena's smile vanished. Dorian continued reading. I could have told you this morning. Perhaps you would have stopped me from leaving. Perhaps you would have removed her from my chair and called it love. But I needed to know whether you would choose your wife when you believed she had nothing left to offer you. Today, you answered. A sound escaped Dorian's throat. The council members watched in silence. He turned to the second page. It carried Dr. Bell's signature. My previous declaration that Duchess Cecilia could never produce an heir was false. I was paid to alter my findings 3 years ago. Dorian's eyes moved to the final line. The payment came from Lady Verena Holt. The letter slipped from his hand. Verena stood. This is a fabrication. Dorian looked at the pearls around her throat. His wife's pearls. His wife's chair. His wife carrying the child he had spent years blaming her for failing to give him. Where is Cecilia? He demanded. Mr. Merritt's answer came quietly. She left no destination. Dorian turned toward Verena. For the first time, he saw not the woman who had saved him from failure, but the woman who had carefully built that failure around him. And somewhere beyond Greymere's gates, Cecilia was carrying his child away from the man who had replaced her before learning she had never failed him at all. Before we continue, subscribe to Nightfall Tales, as this encourages us to keep creating quality content. Dorian crossed the council chamber before Cecilia's letter finished falling to the floor. Lady Verena stepped away from him. This is not what it appears. He stopped beside her chair. Cecilia's chair. But the pearls around Verena's throat seemed brighter now, as though every stone had been polished with his wife's humiliation. You paid Dr. Bell, Dorian said. Verena looked toward the council members. Half the county's most influential men were watching. This is a private matter. You made it an estate matter when you used the lie to enter my home. Her father, Lord Holt, rose from the far end of the table. "Your Grace, I advise caution. The Duchess is distressed. Her accusations may have been written in anger." Dorian slowly turned toward him. "Did you know?" "Know what?" "That your daughter bribed a physician to declare my wife incapable of carrying a child." Lord Holt's expression remained controlled. "I know only that Greymere required an heir, and that Lady Cecilia failed to provide one." The word failed struck Dorian like an echo of his own cruelty. He had spoken it in different forms for years, perhaps never so directly. But Cecilia had heard it in every silence after the nursery was closed. Every time he turned away from her grief, every time he allowed Verena to suggest that Greymere needed a different kind of woman. Dorian looked at the council. "This meeting is ended." Lord Holt lifted a hand. "The investment agreement has not been signed. It never will be." Verena stared at him. "You cannot reject my father's money." "I am rejecting the price. Without our bank, the western lands will be seized. Then I will lose them." Her face hardened. "You would sacrifice Greymere for a woman who has already abandoned you." The accusation awakened something cold in him. "Cecilia did not abandon me." His voice lowered. "I sent her away." For the first time he said it without disguise. Not separation, not estate necessity. Not an arrangement. He had sent away the wife who loved him while she carried his child. Dorian reached for the household keys resting beside Verena. "Those are not yours." Her fingers closed around them. "You gave them to me. I gave you many things that were not mine to give." He held out his hand. The council watched. Verena's pride fought with the knowledge that refusing would expose her further. Slowly, she placed the keys in his palm. Dorian looked at the pearls next. Her hand rose protectively toward them. "You would strip me before these people?" "No." He turned toward Mr. Merritt. "Provide Lady Verena with a private room. She may return the Duchess's belongings there before leaving Greymere." Verena's face lost colour. "You are dismissing me. You entered this house by manufacturing my wife's greatest sorrow. You came to me willingly." That stopped him. The room became silent. Verena's eyes filled, but her voice remained sharp. "I did not force you to ignore her accounts. I did not force you to call her suspicions jealousy. I did not place myself in her chair this morning." Every word was true. Dorian could condemn Verena's deception. He could not pretend she had controlled his choices. "I know," he said. The quiet answer unsettled her. He looked toward Lord Holt. "All negotiations between Greymere and Holt Bank are terminated. Every past transaction will be examined independently." Lord Holt's expression darkened. "You will regret humiliating my daughter." Dorian looked at Cecilia's empty chair. "I have already learned what humiliation costs." He left the council chamber carrying his wife's letter. Cecilia's carriage had changed direction 2 miles beyond the western gate. The driver told Dorian she had ordered him toward the London road, then dismissed him near a coaching inn and hired another carriage under Mrs. Aubrey's name. She had planned carefully. She did not want to be found. Dorian rode to the inn before sunset. The proprietor remembered Cecilia immediately. A quiet lady, pale blue cloak, looked unwell. Dorian's fear sharpened. Was she alone? With an older companion? Where did they go? The proprietor hesitated. The lady paid for privacy. Dorian placed several coins on the counter. The man glanced at them, then shook his head. She paid more. Despite everything, Dorian almost smiled. That was Cecilia. She had anticipated the power of his title and prepared a defense against it. "I am not asking as the Duke of Greymere." The proprietor looked skeptical. "I am asking as the husband who gave her every reason to disappear." The honesty changed the man's expression. He looked toward the empty doorway. They took the northern road. To where? A village called Alderwick. Dorian knew it. Alderwick stood near the border of Cecilia's mother's former estate. The property had been sold years earlier after her family fell into debt. Or so he had believed. He returned to Greymere and went directly to Cecilia's rooms. The wardrobes were empty. Her books were gone, but on the window seat lay a single forgotten glove. Dorian lifted it. The pale fabric still carried the faint scent of lavender. He sat where she had once spent evenings waiting for him to leave the estate office. How many times had he passed the door and promised himself he would enter after finishing one more account? How many nights had she fallen asleep before he arrived? The answer to both was too many. Mr. Merritt appeared quietly. "Your Grace." Dorian did not turn. Did she speak of Alderwick? "Not recently." "Recently?" The butler hesitated. "Her mother owned a cottage there." Dorian looked up. "I was told every property had been sold. One remained in trust." Of course. Another truth he had never thought to question. Why would Cecilia go there? Because it was the last place she remembers feeling entirely safe. Dorian closed his eyes. His wife had not gone to a friend or a relative. She had gone to a memory of safety that existed before him. "Prepare a carriage." Mr. Merritt remained still. "Your Grace, she does not wish to be followed." "I know. Then perhaps following her immediately would prove you have learned nothing." The words would once have cost a servant his position. Now Dorian heard the wisdom inside them. He looked at Cecilia's glove. "What should I do?" "Remove the danger behind her before asking her to face you again. Verena is leaving. Lady Verena was not the only danger." Dorian's gaze sharpened. "What do you mean?" Merritt removed a small account book from his coat. "I found this in Lady Verena's room after she returned the pearls. The book contained payments from Holt Bank to Dr. Bell, but beneath them were larger transfers. Greymere money had been moved into companies controlled by Lord Holt. The Western estate crisis had not merely attracted Verena. Her family had created it. Dorian turned the pages. "They purchased our debts." "Yes." "Then delayed the harvest payments." "Yes." "And offered to rescue us with money they had already taken." Merritt nodded. The scheme had been built slowly. Lord Holt weakened Greymere. Verena convinced Dorian that Cecilia's failure to provide an heir made the Duchess expendable. Then the bank offered salvation through a closer alliance. Dorian had believed himself practical. He had been obedient. "Where is Verena?" he asked. "She left an hour ago." "With her father?" "No." That surprised him. Lord Holt refused to take her. Why? He blamed her for failing to secure the agreement. For the first time, Dorian understood that Verena had also been a piece on her father's board. It did not absolve her, but it changed the shape of the betrayal. Where did she go? No one knows. A servant rushed into the room before Merritt could continue. "Your Grace, a package has arrived from Alderwick." Dorian's heart stopped. "From the Duchess?" There is no name. The package contained Cecilia's forgotten medical report. The original one. Dr. Bell's first findings showed there had never been any condition preventing her from carrying a child. Attached was another letter. Not from Cecilia, from Verena. "Dorian, if you are reading this, my father has already decided I am more useful as the villain than as his daughter. Cecilia is not safe in Alderwick. Lord Holt knows where she went." Dorian rose so quickly the chair struck the wall. Merritt read over his shoulder. Why would Holt pursue her? Dorian turned to the next page. Because the child she carries changes more than Greymere's succession. Cecilia's mother placed her remaining Alderwick property into a marriage trust. If Cecilia produces a lawful Greymere heir, the trust releases enough money to clear every estate debt. Lord Holt cannot seize Greymere if the child is born. Dorian felt cold. Cecilia did not know about the trust. If she had, she would have mentioned it in the letter. Verena continued. "My father has a physician travelling toward Alderwick. He will claim Cecilia's health makes the pregnancy dangerous and urge her to enter his private care. Do not allow her to leave with him." Dorian looked toward the window. Night had fallen. Alderwick was 6 hours away in good weather. The roads were already turning to mud. "Prepare the fastest carriage," he ordered. Merritt shook his head. A horse will be faster. Dorian changed his coat and left Greymere within minutes. Cecilia reached Alderwick Cottage shortly after sunset. The house was smaller than she remembered. Ivy covered the walls. Dust lay over the furniture, but the bedroom still contained her mother's embroidered blankets, and the kitchen window still looked toward the hill where Cecilia had played as a child. Mrs. Aubrey lit the lamps. "You should rest. I have done nothing but sit in carriages. You are carrying a child." Cecilia looked down. The truth still felt impossible. A child. Dorian's child. She wanted to love the life inside her without allowing it to become a chain dragging her back to Greymere. But every time she imagined the baby's face, she saw Dorian's eyes. "What will you tell the child?" Aubrey asked. "The truth." "All of it? When the child is old enough." "And Dorian?" Cecilia touched the window. "He made his choice. Before reading the letter. That was the point." A knock sounded. 3 firm strikes. Cecilia froze. Dorian could not have found her so quickly. Mrs. Aubrey moved toward the door. "Wait!" Cecilia approached the front window. A dark carriage stood outside. An older gentleman descended carrying a medical case. Behind him stood Lord Holt. Cecilia's blood went cold. The knock came again. "Duchess," Holt called. "We have urgent information concerning your condition," Mrs. Aubrey whispered. "Do not open it." Holt continued. "Dr. Bell has confessed that your pregnancy may place your life at risk. I brought a specialist from London." Cecilia's hand moved toward her stomach. Another lie? Or had Verena altered more than the earlier diagnosis? "Show me the confession beneath the door," Cecilia said. Silence followed. Then a folded page appeared. The writing resembled Dr. Bell's. "The pregnancy is unstable. The Duchess requires immediate supervision." Mrs. Aubrey looked frightened. Cecilia examined the signature. She could not tell whether it was genuine. Lord Holt's voice softened. "You may despise my family, Duchess, but the child is innocent." That was precisely why the words were dangerous. He knew which fear would open the door. Cecilia reached toward the lock. Then carriage wheels thundered along the road. A rider appeared through the darkness. Dorian. He dismounted before the horse fully stopped. His coat was wet, his face exhausted, and his eyes fixed upon Lord Holt. "Step away from my wife's door." Cecilia's breath caught. Lord Holt turned calmly. "You are too late." "For what?" "The Duchess has already agreed to leave with my physician." Cecilia stared through the glass. "I agreed to nothing." Dorian looked toward the window. Their eyes met. The relief on his face was immediate, uncontrolled. Not the response of a duke protecting an heir, the response of a man who had feared losing her. Lord Holt saw it too. "Do not be deceived," he called to Cecilia. He followed, because the child saves Greymere. Dorian closed his eyes briefly. Cecilia felt hope freeze. What does he mean? Dorian looked at Holt, then at his wife. He could have hidden the trust. He could have declared it irrelevant. Instead, he told her everything. "Your mother's property will clear Greymere's debts if our child is born." Cecilia's face became still. "So now you need me?" "No. The estate needs my child." "Yes. And you came to bring us back?" "No." His answer surprised everyone. Dorian stepped toward the door, but did not touch it. "I came because Holt intended to frighten you into his custody." "And after saving me?" "I will leave." Cecilia stared at him. "You rode through the night to leave." "I rode through the night because I should have protected you before love became useful." His voice broke. "But I will not turn rescue into another demand." Lord Holt laughed. "A touching performance. Ask him whether he would surrender Greymere to prove it." Cecilia looked at Dorian. He answered without waiting. "Yes." The words silenced the road. "If the trust requires you to return to me, I will reject the money." Cecilia's heart pounded. "You would lose your ancestral estate." "I replaced my wife to save it." He looked at her through the window. If losing Greymere is the price of never making that choice again, I will pay it. Before Cecilia could answer, Verina's carriage appeared at the end of the lane. She stepped down holding a second medical report. Lord Holt's expression changed. "Go home. I no longer have one," she replied. She walked towards Cecilia's door and raised the document. "This proves the physician beside my father is not licensed in London." The supposed doctor stepped backward. Verina faced Cecilia. "My father intends to declare you incapable of managing your inheritance, then place the Alderwick Trust under his bank." Holt's voice turned cold. "You ungrateful child. You taught me gratitude meant obedience." She looked at Dorian. "He believed you." "Yes. And then he discarded me the moment your scheme failed." Verina's eyes filled, but she kept her gaze on Cecilia. "I cannot repair what I did to you, but I can stop him from doing worse." Cecilia opened the door. "Not for Dorian, for the evidence." Lord Holt stepped away as Dorian's estate riders approached behind Verina's carriage. The account book and false medical documents were enough to detain him for investigation. As he was led toward his carriage, he looked at Cecilia. "You believe the Duke would choose you without that child?" The question struck exactly where he intended. Cecilia turned toward Dorian. He stood in the rain, waiting. She looked at Verina. "You knew I was carrying his child before the council meeting?" "No. Would you have surrendered my chair if you had known?" Verina lowered her eyes. "I do not know. At least it was honest." Cecilia faced Dorian. "And you?" His answer came quietly. "I know what I should have done." "That is not what I asked." "No." He looked broken. "I do not know whether I would have found the courage before reading your letter." The honesty hurt more than a romantic lie. Cecilia touched her stomach. Dorian continued. "But the man who replaced you at noon no longer deserves to decide your future at midnight." He removed his signet ring, then placed it on the cottage step. "I surrender every claim the marriage gives me over Alderwick and its trust." Cecilia stared. "The estate solicitors can prepare the documents tomorrow. Greymere will accept whatever follows." "And what do you ask from me?" "One thing." She waited. "Allow me to know whether you and the child are safe." Her eyes filled. "Not return. Not forgiveness. Only knowledge." Cecilia looked at the husband who had chosen another woman when he believed she had nothing left to offer, and who now stood prepared to lose everything rather than make her value depend upon an heir. But a question remained. Was surrender proof that Dorian had changed? Or merely regret arriving after the damage was done? So here is the question. Should Cecilia give Dorian another chance because he is finally willing to sacrifice Greymere for her? Or did replacing her with his mistress destroy the marriage beyond forgiveness? Tell us what you believe she should do in the comments below. Cecilia did not invite Dorian inside. Not that night. He stood in the rain while Lord Holt's carriage disappeared down the road under escort, and Verina remained near the garden wall with her head lowered. Cecilia held the second medical report in one hand. Her husband's signet ring rested on the cottage step between them. Once, that ring had represented everything Dorian believed he must protect. Greymere, his title, his authority, the future of his family. Now he had removed it voluntarily, but Cecilia had learned that dramatic gestures were easier than lasting change. "You should return to Greymere," she said. Dorian's face tightened. "Do you want me to?" "I want time." "How much?" "I do not know." He nodded slowly. The rain ran from his hair onto his coat. Cecilia remembered another night years earlier when he had stood beneath her window during a storm because she refused to speak to him after an argument. He had remained there until she laughed and let him inside. Back then, every disagreement seemed temporary. They had believed love would always lead them home. Now the home itself had become uncertain. Dorian looked toward her stomach. "May I ask one question?" Cecilia waited. "Are you frightened?" The simplicity of it almost broke her. Not, "Is the child safe?" Not, "Will the heir survive?" "Are you frightened?" Yes. His eyes closed briefly. I am sorry you received the news alone. So am I. I should have been beside you. You were placing another woman in my chair. The words struck him. He did not defend himself. I know. Cecilia looked down at the signet ring. What will happen to Greymere? If the trust money is refused, the Western estates may be sold. And the tenants? I will protect their leases before satisfying the private creditors. With what money? My personal properties. You would lose almost everything. No. He looked at her. I would lose land. The distinction remained between them. Dorian stepped backward. I will send a solicitor tomorrow with documents surrendering every claim to Alderwick. I did not ask you to surrender it. No. His gaze softened. That is why I must. He bowed. Not as a duke acknowledging his duchess, as a man accepting that he no longer had permission to remain. Then he turned toward his horse. Dorian. He stopped. Cecilia did not know why she had called him back. Perhaps because he looked exhausted. Perhaps because love had not disappeared simply because trust had. Perhaps because she feared he would vanish again and leave silence to decide everything. You cannot ride back tonight, she said. Hope appeared too quickly in his face. She raised one hand. You may sleep in the gardener's cottage. The gardener's cottage? It has a roof. He almost smiled. Your generosity overwhelms me. You may still leave. No. The old warmth flickered between them. Small, fragile, but alive. The following morning, Dorian signed away Greymere's claim to the Alderwick Trust. Cecilia watched from across the kitchen table. Mr. Penn, an independent solicitor from the village, examined every page. The trust income will belong solely to Lady Cecilia, he explained. Neither the Duke of Greymere nor his estate may use the funds without her written permission. Dorian signed. The child's inheritance? Cecilia asked. Protected separately, Penn said. The Duke cannot control it. Dorian signed that clause too. Cecilia watched his hand. It did not hesitate. When the final page was complete, he placed the pen down. Is there anything else? Mr. Penn looked surprised. You are surrendering substantial legal rights. I asked whether anything else is required. Cecilia studied him. The Dorian, she remembered, would have examined every condition twice. He would have negotiated language, preserved influence, and called it responsibility. This man seemed determined to leave himself no weapon he might one day use against her. No, she said. That is enough. Dorian rose. I will return to Greymere. You have not eaten. He looked toward the untouched bread. I did not believe I was invited. Cecilia almost reminded him that he had eaten at her table for 7 years. But that was the problem. He had mistaken long possession for permanent welcome. Sit, she said. Dorian obeyed. They ate quietly. Not as husband and wife. Not as strangers. Something between the two. Afterward, he prepared to leave again. Verena was waiting near the gate. She had spent the night at the village inn. When Dorian saw her, his expression hardened. What do you want? Verena held a leather folder. To finish what I began. Cecilia joined them. Verena opened the folder and removed several bank records. My father did not merely create Greymere's debt crisis. He also altered the Alderwick marriage trust. Cecilia stared. How? The version delivered to Greymere says the money is released only if Cecilia returns to the estate and produces a lawful heir beneath the Duke's roof. Dorian's face became cold. That would force her back. Yes. Verena handed Cecilia a different copy. The original says the trust is released upon the birth of Cecilia's child, regardless of residence or marital reconciliation. Cecilia compared the pages. One sentence had been changed. Lord Holt's plan had been cruelly simple. Destroy Greymere's finances. Convince Dorian that Cecilia could not provide an heir. Place Verena beside him. Then, when Cecilia finally became pregnant, use the altered trust to force her return under conditions controlled by Holt Bank. Dorian looked at Verena. When did you discover this? Last night. Why should we believe you? You should not. Her honesty stopped him. Verena looked at Cecilia. You believed me once when I offered sympathy. That trust helped me enter your marriage. Her eyes filled. Do not believe me now because I appear remorseful. Verify every page. Cecilia took the documents. I will. Verena nodded. That is fair. She turned to leave. Cecilia called after her. What will you do? Verena looked toward the road. My father has withdrawn my allowance. Society will not welcome me after I testify against him. You could deny everything. I have spent enough years becoming whatever powerful people needed. She looked back once. I would like to discover who remains when no one benefits from my obedience. Then she left Alderwick alone. The original trust document was confirmed before the end of the week. Cecilia could keep Alderwick. She could raise her child anywhere. Graymere had no claim upon either of them. Dorian returned to his estate and began selling his private properties. The London house went first. Then the racing stable. Then a collection of paintings inherited from his grandfather. He used the money to clear tenant debts and prevent the western villages from being divided. He kept no grand residence for himself. Graymere Hall remained, but many rooms were closed to reduce costs. Lady Verena's chair was removed from the council chamber. Cecilia's was returned to Dorian's right hand. It remained empty. For 4 months he did not ask her to fill it. He wrote once each week. The letters contained no pleas. He told her which tenants had been protected, which creditors had been challenged, which accounts were now examined by independent trustees. At the end of every letter, he asked only, "Are you well?" Cecilia answered with a single sentence, "I am well." As the months passed, her replies became longer. The child moves when music is played. Mrs. Aubrey insists the baby dislikes rain. The physician says everything is progressing safely. Dorian never asked whether the child was a son. That mattered to her. One winter afternoon, he arrived at Alderwick, carrying a wooden cradle. Cecilia met him in the garden. "You should have written. I feared you would tell me not to come." "I might have." That fear seemed reasonable. He had built the cradle himself. The wood was imperfectly polished, and one side leaned slightly. Cecilia ran her hand across it. "You made this?" The estate carpenter supervised. "Closely, I hope." "Very closely." She smiled despite herself. Dorian stared at the expression as though he had not seen daylight in months. Then his gaze moved to her stomach. "May I?" Cecilia understood. After a long hesitation, she took his hand and placed it where the child moved. Dorian stopped breathing. A tiny movement pressed beneath his palm. His eyes filled. He lowered himself before her, not from ceremony, but because his knees seemed unable to hold him. "I am sorry," he whispered. Cecilia touched his hair. "For what?" "For every moment you believed this child would make you valuable to me." Her own tears came. "I believed it too." "No." He looked up. "You were valuable before I knew what love required. I was simply too weak to protect what I already had." Cecilia withdrew her hand slowly. "Do you want to return to me?" "Yes." The answer was immediate. "But I will not ask you to return to Graymere." "Why?" "Because the last time I asked you to remain, I offered conditions." He stood. "If we begin again, I want the place to be chosen by both of us." Cecilia looked toward Alderwick Cottage. "This house is small. So is my dignity at present." She laughed through her tears. Dorian smiled. The sound felt like something restored. Not the marriage, not yet, but the friendship beneath it. Their daughter was born in early spring. Dorian waited outside the room at Alderwick, because Cecilia had not yet decided whether she wanted him inside. When Mrs. Aubrey finally opened the door, he rose so quickly that he struck the chair behind him. "Is she safe?" "Both are well." "Both?" Mrs. Aubrey smiled. "A daughter." Relief transformed him. Not disappointment, not calculation, Only love. Cecilia saw it from the bed when he entered. Dorian approached slowly. The baby slept in her arms. "She is beautiful," he whispered. "She looks furious. Then she resembles you." Cecilia looked at him. "Would you have preferred a son?" "No," he answered before she finished. "I wanted you both alive. Everything beyond that is greed." She placed the child in his arms. Dorian held his daughter as though she were made of light. "What will we name her?" he asked. Cecilia heard the word we, not ownership. "Hope. Eleanor," she said. "Your mother's name?" "Yes." He looked down at the child. "Eleanor Cecilia Wren." Cecilia's eyes lifted. "You included my name." She should know whose courage protected her before she was born. Dorian remained at Alderwick for 3 weeks. He slept in the gardener's cottage, changed linens badly, walked the floor with Eleanor at night, and never once asked when Cecilia planned to return. One evening, she found him beside the cradle, humming the melody from their wedding. "You remember it," she said. "I remember everything I damaged." "That is not the same as remembering everything we loved." He looked at her. "No." Cecilia moved closer. "Do you still want me? More than Graymere? That is a dangerous comparison." "It is the truth. And if I never return to the estate, I will come here when invited. And if I choose to remain separated, I will remain Eleanor's father and respect her mother." Cecilia searched his face. The man who replaced her with Verena would have demanded forgiveness because he had exposed the deception. This man understood that discovering another person's betrayal did not erase his own. "I am not ready to return to Graymere," she said. Dorian nodded. "But I am ready to stop living as though our marriage ended that morning." Hope entered his eyes. "What does that mean?" "It means you may move out of the gardener's cottage." He smiled. "To which room?" "The eastern guest room." His expression fell playfully. "That is only one corridor closer. Trust is rebuilt in corridors." He laughed. Then Cecilia reached for him. Their kiss was gentle, careful, not a return to what had been, a beginning after illusion. A year later, Cecilia entered Graymere's council chamber, carrying Eleanor. Her old chair stood beside Dorian. He did not announce her return. He waited until she chose to sit. The estate had survived without using Alderwick's trust. Lord Holt was convicted of fraud and stripped of control over his bank. Verena testified openly, then moved north and opened a school for daughters whose futures had been arranged without their consent. Cecilia never became her friend, but she stopped wishing her ruin. As for Dorian, one letter had changed his life forever. Not because it told him he was about to become a father, because it proved that when he believed his wife had nothing left to offer, he had chosen someone else. He spent the rest of his life ensuring Cecilia never again had to earn her place through usefulness. And whenever Eleanor asked how her parents found their way back to one another, Cecilia answered honestly, "Your father lost me through one terrible choice." Dorian would take her hand. "And your mother allowed me to prove that one choice did not have to become the man I remained forever."